it's also hard to like live in another country for a while and try to keep hold of your accent as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know what.
Well, I'm from Minnesota, which has a definite accent too, and
I've seen the movie Fargo.
Oh yeah.
Is that Minnesota?
It's right on the border. That's actually North Dakota.
No, all right,
but,
okay.
Yeah, it's kind of a caricature of Minnesotan dialect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually really like that accent.
Yeah. It's kind of Canadian in a way. Now that I grew up thinking that was the right way to talk, and everyone else sounded funny.
Yeah.
Now I'm distant from it, so.
Yeah, I guess having moved around a lot, like I just don't have just not that. I don't really care about my accent anymore.
Yeah. How long have you lived here?
It's be 6 years in September.
Oh, okay.
Although what I don't want is to have that. When I first moved here, I met this guy from England, but he'd been here for 15 years.
Yeah.
And he had, and I may have a bit of this, I don't really know, but he had like this weird hybrid American English twang. And
was he trying to speak American?
No, I don't think so. He'd just been here so long and had come over as a teenager, which I think has an impact as well.
Yeah.
And so at the age of 30, he had this weird hybridization.
Yeah.
And that I'm not particularly interested in.
Right.
I'd like to avoid that.
Yeah.
Either all one way or the other.
Okay. So let's see. I'm going to ask you to stand just a little closer,
Okay.
like maybe right there, and we'll be talking to each other. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I don't. It kind of has like a fisheye lens on it. So.
Okay.
So, what's your name, first of all?
My name's Geoff.
I'm Geoff too.
Oh.
How do you spell it?
With a G, of course.
Really?
Yeah.
Geoff?
Geoff.
I mean G.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're a J, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
although many people would call it Geoff.
Yeah. I mean that's how it looks to me.
Yeah.
And is that the traditional English way of spelling it?
Yeah.
Any idea of what Geoff means? I don't know. Like, where did it come from?
Very intelligent, very good looking, smart, quick-witted.
Okay.
But fast, strong. I think that's what what I think.
Yeah.
Probably means.
I think there is a trend there.
Yeah.
A pattern.
Yeah.
So Geoff, what do you think happens after we die? What's your take on that?
I don't think anything. I really don't know.
Okay.
My best guess is that nothing.
Yeah.
We disappear. We stop living. Would be my best guess.
Yeah. Would that be your not just your best guess, but your best hope, or best
I kind of feel
if you had your hope of what happens.
I certainly wouldn't want there to be some sort of like eternal afterlife. That sounds terrible.
Yeah.
To me, and I think that's I think also it's a negative. It's quite a dangerous way of looking at our existence on this earth.
Yeah.
And like, oh, it's okay. I can repent whatever I've done wrong here and now, and I'll be okay in the eyes of whatever God I believe in.
Yeah. No, thank you.
I think that leaves lots of opportunities to people maybe not to look out for other human beings as much as they should, because they've got this idea, this notion to fall back on.
Yeah. Of forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And did you grow up with that? Parents that taught you that, or did
No.
you have like a church?
My parents
background?
I haven't really had many conversations with my parents about religion.
Uh-huh.
They are.
But more so, I'm convinced it's more so the example that they set. So even if you didn't talk about it, like you kind of knew, like say, like if they were like really religious, but then they don't, like they're in church and for an hour a week they're really religious, but then the rest of the week, I mean, that speaks pretty strong too, Possibly,
no, I don't. I wouldn't even say it was either of those. I think they were pretty busy as I was growing up.
Uh-huh.
And I think they'd like send us to Sunday school.
Yeah.
To get us out of the house. But even then in Sunday school, I was like, I'm not really feeling this.
And was that like what, Church of England?
Yeah, it's Church. Yeah, I think it would have been a Church of England or a Catholic church. I don't think.
Yeah.
I went to a Church of England primary school, then a church, then a Catholic, Roman Catholic primary school.
Yeah.
I never. I found. Yeah, I always felt like very, just like, not part of that. I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting, even from the youngest age.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just because, like, along with not believing there's an afterlife, would you say you don't believe in God or a higher power?
Again, I wouldn't say either way. I'd say that there's certainly no reason to believe in it.
Yeah.
And there's certainly no. I completely understand why some people, particularly in times of trauma and adversity and difficulty, as a survival instinct and survival mechanism, we might reach out in the hope of faith of like one last thing to cling to. And I completely understand that in our human nature. I also understand organized religion for the purpose of controlling a population. But in terms of a God, I just don't see any. It's such a stretch. For me, it's so fantastical. Like great movie plot. Yeah, definitely.
What would it take for you to believe that God exists? Like if there was an intelligent, and I believe there is, but if there was an intelligent creator that made everything, what would you expect this being to do? Like what would be realistic in your mind?
Well, first of all, I just want to challenge the idea that if there is a creative being, I'd say fuck you. Yeah, wholeheartedly. The suffering. If you've chosen this amount of suffering on this earth, if you've chosen to starve children in sub-Saharan Africa, if that's part of your big plan, then fuck you. So that's another reason why I can't believe there would be anything like bone cancer in children. What?
So I guess taking that perspective, so it's like God must not exist because of the suffering in the world, right?
That is just one. That isn't my thesis.
Sounds like
that's
the biggest one.
No. That's just the first thing that comes to my mind.
Oh, okay.
I don't really spend too much time thinking about it, to be honest with you. But that's one that's like really, I guess, agitates me a bit. But just one of many reasons. And I also thoroughly believe like the burden of proof is on the believer of this thing where there is anything but evidence for its existence.
I mean, I'm a believer, so the burden of proof would be on me.
Of course. And but also I think it's kind of like a fool's errand trying to prove or disprove, which is why I'm just like, meh. That's what I would. That's what I'd go with.
I mean, the Christian faith is a faith, which means there doesn't have to be a proof involved. It's not. We don't say it's a science. We don't say it's a. We don't say it's a law of nature that like you can prove. And I think as science marches on, I think they're finding more and more things that you just can't prove in even scientifically speaking. So it's like, okay, well, if we're going to apply the I guess the standards of science to like a let's stand this way, maybe it'll anyway, would it require like if we treat God, a creator, like say a higher power, like electricity is there is more power. There's so much power in electricity, we could all be killed in a second, right? But as we've learned about it, we've learned to control it, and now we, for the most part, are the ones that are the higher power than electricity, using our minds. And so it's beholden to us, unless we get zapped by lightning or something, but it's beholden to us because it has to act a certain way in certain circumstances. And we know that. We see a pattern and we take advantage of that. Well, if God is, a higher power, but has a mind of his own, he wouldn't be beholden to act a certain way just because, it's not like he's a genie in a bottle where you rub it and it has to come out and obey your commands, And so even something like suffering in the world would not be, God is not beholden, and the Bible doesn't even portray God as being beholden to our demands for goodness, that he'd be good all the time.
Yeah, and that's why I said if there is a God, I'd say, and maybe I shouldn't have cursed on your video, I apologize for that, but
nobody watches them anyway.
Oh, okay.
I've had a lot of people curse like that,
Okay.
and no one's complained.
Okay, fair enough.
So some people do watch it.
Yeah, I mean it's not it's, for me, that's not
And can I just say this? Part of the profanity thing, in case anyone's watching or watches in the future, is I'm trying to show how we can have positive, peaceful conversations with anybody.
Oh, yeah.
And so we have to be ready for any kind of language they use.
Yeah.
So there it is.
Saying that, I personally don't think there's anything wrong with that word. Particularly...
I can't even say it.
Yeah. Oh, really? Okay, all right, fair enough. But, I mean, look, I'm like I said, I just don't care enough to really want to really your argument is fine, but it's operating within the realms of such degrees of separation from our reality that I just find it fascinating more than I find it interesting.
Uh-huh.
I find it
other people.
I find it curious,
Mm-hmm.
than much more than I find it. Oh, okay. I wonder. Maybe I should spend some time thinking about that.
Yeah.
Now,
let me say this. I view myself as a respecter of science.
Yeah.
I appreciate science. I benefit from science. A rational person.
It's good to hear. Don't hear that very.
I'm actually a high school history teacher.
Oh, so am I.
Really?
Yeah.
Named Geoff.
Yeah.
In CPS?
Yeah.
Which school?
Curie.
Oh, okay. I used to teach at Hancock.
Oh, okay.
Which is, real close.
Now
I'm in backyards.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, we're really close.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. Okay.
So, I feel like I'm a rational person, educated.
Yeah.
For someone like you, but I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
And I don't take the Bible literally in terms of everything in it is literal, because there's many different genres and many different, ways that truth is conveyed through the Bible. True. In my understanding. But I do say it's literally God's word. In other words, this is what God wanted put in there. So I'm not a literalist in the sense that, you take one sentence and
So how did to the people who wrote the Bible,
mm-hmm.
like the scriptures, and how did they get the word of God? How did that manifest itself with them?
I mean, we would say it's in the Bible actually says it's people inspired by God. So it's God speaking through them and through their culture and through everything that they knew. Mm. They actually say things that are not true, and we have to understand that they believed it was true, or they'll, you can't take everything in their, how can I put it? We have to look at things from their perspective, if that makes sense. So
it makes sense so much as...
So a lot of people have a hard time with a lot of things in the Old Testament, right?
Yeah.
I would say it had a primary audience, which was mainly throughout the Old Testament was the Jewish nation.
Yeah.
And I'm not Jewish, and I don't have any. So, but it still speaks to me. It speaks principles,
Yeah.
So, for example,
but then I would argue. Sorry to interrupt, but I'd argue there's there are abundant principles in our society. They're Jesus clearly had principles. He's clearly a profoundly, deeply spiritual and enlightened leader.
Yeah.
As was Buddha, as is Eckhart Tolle now. I don't think you necessarily. I don't really know, but I just don't think you need a God to believe in. Now, if you want to have a God to believe in, some people might need a God to believe in to justify. Oh wow, look at that human being. They're operating on such a different level to us.
Yeah.
They're so wise. They're so loving. They're so spiritual, so caring. That's not normal for human beings.
Yeah.
They've gathered and their wisdom and their what's the word I'm looking for? Charisma attracts people to them, and they have followers.
Yeah.
And we see that in literally every religion across the planet throughout the ages, and we still see it today.
Yeah.
And I think, and this is literally just coming to me right now as I think, as you're encouraging me to think about this, I think a lot of human beings, that blows their minds.
Yeah.
There's got to be something bigger that this came from.
Yeah.
There's got to be something, there has to be a creator who came up with this, because that's not a typical human. And you're right, it's not a typical human, but neither is Usain Bolt. I don't believe he was like zapped onto Earth by God by a lightning bolt.
Yeah. Usain
Bolt, yeah, the runner, the sprinter. You know, like he is equally as fantastic and otherworldly as Jesus and Buddha and all these other prophets, right?
Yeah.
And so,
I look at the impact on history. I can't think of anyone who impacted history more than Jesus. You know, and coming from this little backwater during the Roman Empire. And having that kind of an impact.
Yeah, I don't really have much care for people who have had impacts on history, to be honest with you. And
teach history from the common man perspective.
100%.
Yeah.
And particularly this idea of, like, I know, particularly in Western society, we love to put people on a pedestal. We like to have this one savior. Mm-hmm. And I am, the way I think society should operate is the complete antithesis of that. Mm-hmm. And this, like, particularly when we look at American exceptionalism, I'm not at all surprised how religious and Christian America is. Mm-hmm. The way the country was founded, the ideals it was founded upon, what it celebrates, the kind of people that it props up and puts in the limelight and celebrates, the kind of people that the society lets get away with the kind of things that the common man, as you put it,
I would say that so we've veered away from American exceptionalism in history, and because history was originally taught in the early 1900s for the sake of trying to Americanize all these immigrants.
Yeah.
You know, it was actually like a civics course.
Yeah.
And here are your, if you're an American, here are your heroes,
Yeah.
And now Common Core it's just teaching us to think for ourselves, which I think is great, Mm-hmm. As a Christian, I'm all for the idea that, okay, if you're going to have an opinion, let's see you back it up with some evidence.
Yeah.
I think that's great, because as a Christian, I have a lot of opinions about the Bible, but people need to be able to ask us, well, what is your evidence for that opinion? Well, it says this, it says that. Bible's a huge library of books. It's not. And so, like, a person can draw a lot of different opinions out of there, and people can be in disagreement about them. And so they need to have a conversation saying, well, this is what it says here, and let's compare it to that.
Yeah.
So I like that part of American history and the direction it's turned.
Yeah.
But the loss of, we can say American exceptionalism, yes, people were propped up as heroes in American history and put on statues, and we have to ask ourselves, what is the reason they were put on that statue? So is it because they were a slaveholder, or is it because, I've been, George Washington, for example, he had several hundred slaves. Well, we're not celebrating that, I don't know if you're, aware of some of the bravery shown in battle, the way the framers of the Declaration of Independence had to put their lives on the line for. I mean, they were, you know,
but like
very brave individuals that,
Yeah.
and so it's the bravery. It's not. Obviously, no one's perfect, and obviously, many people are very flawed.
Come on, that's terrible.
Well, but I guess what I'm saying is, well, if we're not going to put them up there, who are we going to put
well,
up? And if we look at any person's life, if we look at any person's life that we want to put on a statue,
yeah,
it sounds like you don't want to put anyone on a statue, right? Because
Well-
you just don't believe in any kind of heroes or role models or.
that's right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't be putting a slave owner on a statue, and I wouldn't be doing it as part of a political movement. A couple of, like 100 years after the Civil War. So
That is true. You know, some of them were like maybe not looked up to so much in their time, but then later on we decided this is a hero worth emulating. You know.
yeah, and
Yeah. So I know a lot of the Confederate statues in the South were actually put up by the daughters of the Confederacy or something like that. It was like a racist organization that
Yeah.
wanted to perpetuate,
yeah.
the South even long after the Civil War, and so these statues were put up for racist reasons, So
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
I mean I don't think it's a lot to ask, and I think it's I'm just surprised that somebody would care so much about an old statue
yeah.
of one guy than to let it
For me
to let it
personally,
let it stay up there, and
I'm for the conversation,
yeah.
and but I'm not for like mob rule, things like that. So,
Well, the mob rule is well. This is quickly turning into a political
right?
debate. But
Yeah.
what the mob rule is the mob rule is in the legislative branch of the government.
I'm just gonna hold it.
So
Well,
Martin Luther King said that
Uh-huh.
a riot is the language of the unheard, and America has to figure out what it's not listening to. And I find it interesting that people, or yourself and lots of people, would criticize and point the finger at people who are protesting, and mostly peacefully, in some cases violently, but it is within their right. It's written into the Constitution.
well, to peacefully assemble, yeah.
To protest, and that's not even being allowed in many places now. If we want to talk about mob rule, we can talk about executive orders that are breaking several amendments in the Constitution, and I just don't see why people would choose to of all the arguments you could make, of all the cases you could make, of all the things you'd get upset about, this is the one. You're getting upset about the statue of the guy who owned slaves being pulled down. You're upset about the statue of the. I'm not saying you're not, but the statue of the Confederate leader, who has a statue built, who literally fought to preserve slavery, and so. And I know there's all this language going around about, oh, they're a terrorist, oh, they're a traitor. Fuck that. That's irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
They have every right to have a civil war. They have every right to fight against the Union, but they drew their line in the sand and stood on the side of slavery. That's the issue I have. I don't have an issue with them forming an army and fighting the Union. I don't have an issue with that at all.
Yeah.
Fine, go for it. Your platform for that, though, is what I have an issue with.
Yeah.
Like, I would support if there was a civil war to reform the American government and American politics, and to do something about wealth distribution, the mass inequality in this country, the systemic racism in this country, the multi-generational. And systemic racism in this country. If there's a civil war for that, I'm not saying there should be, but if there was, I wouldn't be at all surprised. Actually, I'm a little bit surprised there hasn't been. And
we're very close to it, I think.
Yeah.
When people start facing off with guns in their hands, there's going to be a shot that was heard around the world, kind of thing.
Yeah, maybe there's going to be something like that. Yeah. That's kind of interesting. But I want to know where all these Second Amendment warriors are when Trump's sending these federal police into Portland and arresting journalists and police have been arresting journalists for months now in this country. Well, at what point are you gonna stop using your Second Amendment argument just to, I don't know, prop up your sense of losing your white power in this country and actually use it for what you claim you have it for? So I find it all very interesting, and when we talk about religion in this country, I think the two things are deeply entwined. That all of these things that I've mentioned are all deeply entwined in the culture war in this country.
Yeah.
And the polarization of politics. I
mean, I really do believe the next step is not just to attack the government, the police, the institutions of our country, but also just Western culture itself, because it does have such a strong Christian, I don't want to say Christian, I'll say Christendom background. Just the idea of in the Catholic Church, became part of the politics. That's what I call Christendom. I don't so I'm not Catholic. As a Christian, I think a lot of people claim to be Christian that aren't. And how do I know? Because Jesus said you'll recognize a tree by its fruit. They're not following his teachings. Which are not easy teachings to follow. So, but people like to claim that they are.
Yeah.
What? So you believe Jesus is a great charismatic figure in history? I mean,
I think there's definitely that I can believe.
Yeah. I mean, obviously,
or I can err on the side of acceptance that there's this guy who existed.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, one wouldn't believe that he's the Son of God if you don't believe in God.
Exactly.
So
I wouldn't
it kind
believe
of
that at all. No, that because I think
to get back to that.
I think that would be.
Do you think?
That's a stretch.
Do you think if
the son of who?
Right. Well, yeah. And
Joseph probably.
Yeah.
I think so.
Well, typically, so like when I ask something like, what would it take for you to believe in God? Typically some people will say like a huge miracle or whatever. It's like, okay, well, I don't know if that's what you would say, but I mean, does that mean God has to perform 7 billion miracles, one individually for each person, or could there be an event in history where God has shown himself, or could it be that God decided to become a man and come down and be with us? And is that far-fetched, really?
Yeah, it's very.
I mean, would you say if
it
God, the God that could create this whole universe? I mean, we're talking about the creator here, not any kind of part of creation.
Well, you're talking about the creator.
That's what I mean when I say God. So I'm not necessarily meaning the Christian God, but I mean, do you believe in a creator or a higher power that created everything, right? And so I don't think it's a stretch to say this God that made not just the physical universe, but the laws that govern that universe.
Yeah.
Would that God not have the ability to suspend those laws for a time, to walk on water, or to perform a miracle, or to come in the form of a man and relate to us on a level we can understand? So the Bible actually teaches if you've seen Jesus, you've seen God. In other words, it says that he's the image of the invisible God.
I mean, it sounds lovely.
Yeah, well,
but it's not.
Jesus would be the reason I'm a Christian.
Yeah, and it's just not talking in any frame of reality. And not that I have an issue with fantasy, but when people hang their hatred on that fantastical philosophy of theirs, then I have an issue with it. And I certainly don't have an issue with kind, loving peaceful Christians at all.
Mhm.
How
How about angry? Do you think it's okay to be angry?
I mean, in what? By who?
Our pastor
just
had
in
a sermon.
in general.
Our pastor had a sermon this morning about.
I get angry.
He called it good and angry.
Okay.
And really, if you are concerned about, for example, loving your neighbor,
Yeah.
would it not be a good thing to get angry when you see someone hurting their neighbor? That's a righteous anger. Now, what you do with that is important, But if you looked at it with indifference, you saw someone suffering, if you saw a child being abused and you weren't angered by it, wouldn't that be the ultimate hatred? To not care,
Yeah,
So,
ambivalence.
because I've been getting.
I know if ambivalence is the ultimate hatred at all. No, I disagree with that. But
We have to choose our battles carefully, so we do
definitely.
have to learn a certain amount of.
Yeah,
I can't do anything about it, so I'm not going to let it kill me or eat me up inside.
You do have to
but-
pick, and you have this self-preservation is obviously a human instinct. But
Yeah.
I was going to say something to that. Yeah, I think anger is a natural instinct, and the way you say it, I think that's fair enough. And I think your pastor is. I get what you're saying there.
It was
But
interesting.
I don't think we should be trying to excuse anger, and I don't think we should be saying, you can create any narrative you want to excuse anything, right?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to create any narrative that makes anger okay, particularly if that anger leads to violence, even if it is something to do with protecting your neighbor, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we should all be striving to be peaceful and compassionate. And I'd rather your pastor steered the conversation away from anger.
Well, he normally does.
And more
so he
towards
said,
compassion.
he said, this is going to be a sermon unlike I've ever given. I'm actually trying to inspire you towards anger
Okay.
against things that are hurting people. And again, it really made sense. Here's another statement.
Yeah.
Could a God of love hate? And should a God of love hate? Well, if God loves people, would he not hate the things that
I should be
that hurt us?
Sorry. Apologize.
Oh, I don't even have one.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I'm downwind from you, so you're all good.
Okay. Yeah. So I should have this on.
So when we say, well, how can a God of love hate? He would hate those things that that defame his name. Number one, because, and this is kind of getting into a lot of things. Could the Bible repeatedly says God is a jealous God? Okay. Now I get it, but
We're trying to humanize something. I humanize my cat, right?
is
'Cause
jealousy
it's cute,
only
and
a
it's cute.
human
I love
emotion?
to humanize my cat.
Mhm.
And my girlfriend does as well. She makes these jokes. We got a little cute black cat. She's like, we pretend that she goes to Hogwarts for cats. And she'll say, did you go to your potions class today, or did you skip out of class again? And we joke with her, have you done your potions homework? Like, she's a witch's cat, right?
Yeah.
And would love to humanize her. It's really cute. I love it. But like this idea of humanizing this God, and a jealous God. I mean, come on.
Well, can I explain it?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
so the thing that makes jealousy pathetic is that if I'm jealous of a certain person, they're giving their attention somewhere else other than me. That's pretty pathetic, because it's almost like I'm saying I'm everything you need.
Yeah.
And that's, no person is that, right? But if God truly is the God who made us, he's kind of like the fuel that, he designed us in a way where being in a right relationship with our Creator is the fuel that runs, and he would know what runs us best. If someone put water in my gas tank of my car, I would be angry. I would be maybe jealous that they didn't put gasoline in, because it's like, this is a beautiful car. It can't run on that. So the idea is that God is a jealous God because he sees us trying to run on something other than him and his teachings and his ways and what he knows is best for us. And so to say that it's a human emotion, that's, you know, like, I understand it seems pathetic to say God is jealous, but the only thing that makes jealousy pathetic is people aren't God. And so they're carrying on like they are God and they deserve to be jealous.
Yeah.
But God would be the one being that deserves to be jealous because he knows what's best for everything and knows how he wants the world to run, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that, like, I wouldn't call jealousy pathetic. It's certainly a trait of the human condition.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes
like,
a woman wants her husband or boyfriend to show a little jealousy, like he cares, you know.
And a man would also want their female partner to show,
either way,
show
if it works same, either way, yeah.
And I just don't think pathetic is fair on human beings, because it's clearly something that everyone suffers with. But really the question is, like, what do we do about it, or asking questions like why are we jealous? What triggers those uncomfortable, anxious feelings of jealousy inside of us?
Yeah.
And you can look at it through many things. Definitely, in a materialistic capitalist society where our whole existence is like, it's kind of like built around owning things and improving our lives and being successful and having the American dream,
yeah,
and those kind of things.
And when it's kind of selfish based. Yeah.
Well, that's how capital works, right?
Yeah.
And it works on selfishness,
yeah,
and greed, and I think jealousy is a direct result of that. And
yeah,
we've got to look, and that's why Eastern teachings of like Buddhism and presence and meditation have been, and I'm sure
trying
also
to get rid of
things,
desire.
I'm sure, messages in the Bible, I'm sure do the same thing.
Yeah.
A lot of the kind of like teachings of Jesus that I hear from people who know them much better than I do talk about that, you know.
Yeah.
Or I know some of them love thy neighbor, for example.
I mean,
right?
it's actually not possible to understand the Bible without understanding God's basic purpose. Well, you can have your own understanding of the Bible, but unless you realize that throughout the Bible, God is concerned about receiving the glory he deserves, which again, for a human, that would be laughable. But if God truly does deserve the glory for being the creator, and if instead of giving God that glory, we give it to ourselves, or we give it to this tree, or we attribute that kind of power and that kind of glory, reverence to something other than God, it's like throwing a wrench into an engine. It causes the whole thing to break down.
I kind of see this idea, like, it's interesting, right? I see this idea of, like, giving, like, glory to God and worshipping God, like such a waste of love. Such a profound waste of love. What a terrible thing to do, to, like, give all your devotion and love to this God. Well, and who, in your words, is probably selfish, is probably angry. But when we could be giving it to each other.
Well, I mean, that's why Jesus said the second commandment is like the first. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. So how can I show God love? By going out and loving my neighbor, you know? Yeah, I mean, that's what Jesus taught us. That's what's taught throughout the Old Testament.
If that's what you need to love your neighbor, then fair enough.
I mean, if you...
I wouldn't argue with it. I wouldn't argue with that at all.
Yeah.
That sounds nice.
Yeah.
If that works for you, if that's the equation that works for you, to be like, oh, I'm serving this high purpose by serving this person next to me. Yeah. Then I'm down with that.
Yeah. I mean, the alternatives say, well, I'm a good person regardless of, reward or punishment or God's existence. I just love my neighbor no matter what,
Yeah.
And that's okay, but that's the common line I hear from atheists. I don't need God to be good. I've never met an atheist who wasn't concerned about being good, about justifying their existence somehow. Mm-hmm. The Bible would say that comes from the law that God has put in our hearts, that we all have a conscience.
I mean,
that we all have a desire to somehow justify our existence, and so we want to be good. It's just that we want to be good on our terms, not on God's terms.
I mean, it sounds like that if you were going, if a believer of God had to come up with a reason or an argument about why you can see the manifestation of God in an atheist, then that would be the argument, right? That God has endowed that in you as an atheist.
Yeah,
that's part of His plan.
I've never met anyone
how convenient.
Yeah, I've never met anyone who doesn't have that spark of some sort of conscience. Some people have learned to, I guess, cover it up. The Bible talks about us getting calloused to our conscience, you know, so there are people who just ignore it. And the more we ignore it, the more easy it is to ignore. But there's this sense of right and wrong, and that there's a referee out there to whom we're accountable to, you know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it becomes a greater good to be able to say, well, I'm doing good because I'm just a good person. I don't need reward or punishment or God looking over my shoulder. I just do it for goodness sake. And that's what you see on the billboards, you know, atheism, be good for goodness sake. You know? And,
I mean, there's billboards for atheism?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That seems another pointless thing to me. Okay. Like, just let it go.
But
just let it go. We're not going to win the argument.
I guess if there's anything I'd like to maybe push back on or challenge you with, it would be that God is not beholden to be a loving God. That He can have anger, He can have hate, and He can have jealousy for good reasons. You know, like there are logical reasons why a God of love would also be a God that would hate certain things and would be angry towards certain things and be jealous of certain things.
Well, that's again, we're humanizing the God.
Yeah.
I wonder what like the
The Bible would say that God is and always has existed, that we can't humanize God, but that God has created us in His image, so that there are certain ways in which we do kind of take after God. But it's man. The ultimate goal is for us to be made in the image of God more completely, to grow and mature, you know. So like I became a Christian in my late teens, and the goal of my life has been to become more and more like Christ, because He's the ultimate example, you know. Yeah. Have I reached that goal? No, by no means, you know.
Yeah, but, I hate to break it to you, you're not going to either.
No, you're right.
But I think it's I don't want to be rude about it, but
I've heard everything, so go ahead.
Yeah, no, I don't want to like offend you. I really don't want to do that. But like, we are made in the image of God. God made us in His own image. I had the word. What's the word I'm looking for? It's
arrogant,
it's egotistical.
Yeah.
To the
it would be egotistical if I said it, but I didn't make it up. And the other part of it is,
if you're propagating that idea.
Yeah. The other part of it is, okay, if I'm in the reflection, if I'm made in God's image, an image is something you see in a mirror, right? An image is not the real thing. An image takes after, you know, you look in the mirror, you don't have, what you're looking at does not have 3 dimensions, it doesn't make noise, it doesn't have smell, there's a lot of ways in which it falls short. And so for us, to say that we're made in God's image basically only means we can relate to God in a way that other parts of His creation can't.
I don't know, then we need to be careful about the language then, because I think if you're saying,
it could be
like,
taken wrong.
Our egos are the image we have of ourselves, right? And therefore, if working this backwards, if the image you have of yourself is that of what you see as a supreme
it's a
being
goal.
and a God, then I think that's absolutely terrifying.
The Bible actually calls itself a mirror.
Okay.
Like the different laws, like the 10 Commandments. You know, if I look in the mirror of the 10 Commandments, have I ever lied? Yes, I have. Yeah. Have I ever stolen? Yes, I have. Have I ever hurt someone with my words, which Jesus said is like murder? Yes, I have. You know, on down the line, if I look in that mirror, I realize how far short I fall of God's standard. And so I have to say, you know, as far as being a righteous person, man, I am far from it. You know, that's why I need what Jesus did on the cross to take the punishment for me, because, man, if I take it myself, I don't deserve any kind of reward. I deserve punishment. So it's not necessarily arrogant or egotistical to say I believe I'm going to heaven, it just means I believe I've been saved from where I really truly deserve to go. And then a person can have the motivation of wanting to obey Jesus and wanting to talk to other people about it, so they'll maybe think about it more seriously themselves.
I think the only people we should be obeying is our own conscience, and if our own conscience isn't what we want it to be, then we need to work on ourselves and be mindful of that. And there's lots of ways we can do it. And I certainly wouldn't want to obey anybody. And that kind of connotation and language, I think.
I know.
I have an issue with it, but
yeah. It's almost like the jealousy thing about man. It's like, who would want to obey any kind of an earthly human person? Because they are jealous, and that power will go to their head. But if God has all, like, the more we discover about this universe, the more we realize, if it was made by God, a higher power, how powerful is that being? And I could spend an eternity with God, not ever scratching the surface of his complexity and his, all the depths of what it means to be in the presence of the Creator.
Why do you believe?
It won't be boring.
What is your evidence for their? How can you justify the existence of God?
I mean, for me,
I'm not talking about a Bible, because I think I don't want to know like the Bible. I want to be like you as a person, as an individual, like your spirituality. What is your?
Yeah, for me, long before I would say I believe the Bible, I would believe the existence of matter and energy all around me, and just the common sense that says it didn't create itself. It was, there was.
Why would you say that?
Nothing can't. It takes more faith to believe that nothing created everything than something created everything.
You think?
I believe, and so I begin there.
You think it's too perfect?
Huh?
I hear the argument. Oh, this is all too perfect. Look at, this park is beautiful, but is it too perfect?
I think
to have
the kind of complexity that now scientists are finding, and that say that DNA and not to mention how big the universe is, but even on a small scale, getting down into the micro level. I mean, obviously it's full of destruction and suffering, and so it's not perfect that way, but perfect as far as
focusing on like the beauty and the perfect nature.
So I mean, there's order. If I look at a brick wall, I know there were bricklayers. It's just, to me, it's like a little kid could say that. And to be a follower of Jesus, you have to become like a child. He doesn't say come childlike, but to almost think like a child. I have to be able to say, okay, just because I look around and I can't explain it doesn't mean there's not an explanation.
There's a big difference between that ugly old brick wall and this beautiful tree, and I'd say that is an example. You could make that would be the argument for there not being created.
I see order, and like I see a universe it is crumbling and it's becoming disordered, but there is a whole lot of order. I guess I could get all into the evolution argument too. The Bible actually says we're devolving. Okay. In other words, when man first rebelled against God, we started to, they were living, according to the Bible, 600-700 years. Okay? The lifespan has been dropping ever since. It dropped, now it's come back up because, we're learning the accumulation of knowledge. We're learning how to prolong life.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we're more susceptible to disease, more susceptible to
but that's that isn't to do with devolution. That is to do with like what humans have done to the planet.
So like evolution basically says that there's mutations that result in a better ability to survive. I would say no. There's mutations that are breaking down the DNA code.
Wow. Okay.
It's de-evolution. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but devolution.
Devolution, yeah.
Devo.
Yeah. Wow. I mean.
But yeah. So I mean that kind of goes like it's breaking down because of sin.
What's breaking?
It's just the whole world order.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like there's a whole lot of, I guess you could call it chronological snobbery. We believe that we're so much better than the people from the past. But we have
I certainly don't.
We have the advantage of the accumulation of knowledge, but I don't know that we have. I mean, you look at some of these ancient civilizations, we can't begin to explain how they did what they did. Some of the technological marvels that they do. I mean, there's whole shows about that.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, I mean, of course, people then say, well, it must have been space aliens that came and gave them this superior technology.
There's lots of interesting ideas, and some people think the Earth is flat as well. And some people think that.
I will say this: there are many good, strong, believing Christians who believe in evolution. I'm not one of them.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's okay. It's not. There's certain things that are required. You know, like you have to understand or believe as a Christian, and then there's some things that are secondary. And that's where you get all the different divisions and denominations and within the Christian, umbrella.
I can understand how. I'm getting tired by that. I haven't even eaten yet today. I eat after my run. It's almost 2 o'clock. I'm gonna have to go in a minute because I'm getting tired. But
interesting talking with you, especially as a fellow. Teacher.
Right. Definitely, it's been very interesting.
We have very different, viewpoints, worldviews, and it's okay.
I get to talk to people about politics a lot because in my department there are a couple of Republicans. We have a large history department. So
I've been there. I've subbed at Curie.
Oh, you have? Yeah.
It's like, what is there, about 30 desks in a row, and they still have those long staff rooms.
That's right. Yeah. With no sunlight. And we get to talk about that, but I think most people are on the same page when it comes to religion. So I don't really get to have these conversations very often.
About religion?
Yeah, so I do appreciate it. I couldn't really disagree with you more.
Yeah, that's fine.
On pretty much everything.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I just like to challenge the idea that God can't be, that there isn't room for hate of certain things and anger and jealousy. God is God. And that's the only way you can explain a lot of things that happen in the Bible.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to try to explain this beautiful planet in such a narrow, constricted frame. And that's where I'd come from, and because it is extremely narrow and constricting.
Yeah.
When you look at it that way, I don't think it can be explained. I don't think we can. I think we don't know anything, right?
Kind of just thinking about your original statement that you hope that this life is all there is because it makes it that much more meaningful. I would say, if eternity is waiting for us, an eternity of being with our Creator or being in rebellion against our Creator, if that's ahead of us and this life is like a snap, in the context of eternity, how much more meaningful is this life? Because we're going to have to live with what we did here, because this is a time when we're surrounded by good and we're surrounded by evil. How are we going to respond to it? I'm going to have to live with that the rest of eternity, and so it actually makes this short life even more meaningful that way. So it's, again, is it half full, half empty? We're looking at two different things. Is this life more meaningful because there is nothing after this? You would say that. I would say the opposite. But it's okay.
The outcome
it's
still hopefully the same, is that we want to do our best.
It is important to do our best, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm Geoff, by the way.
Geoff.
Yeah, we got on.
Yeah. Well, here, I'm going to give you my info.
Yeah.
This is my YouTube channel right there. And
cheers, Geoff.
Usually takes, in the summertime now, it takes me a while because I try to write a little bit about the conversation. And I'm busy with some other projects. So, but maybe within a week, I'll have it up there. So.
Yeah, okay, sounds good.
All right.
It was a pleasure talking with you.
Probably run into you at some CPS function or something.
Probably. Yeah. All right. Well, good luck with the school year, however it looks.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
All right, you too.